I'm Eric Flannery. I was opened up this bar with the help of my brother about 10 years ago here in Washington, D.C. I'm a nuclear engineer. I was in the Navy for 7 years. I've worked in Silicon Valley. I know how to do things, marketing, sales, operations. I've worked in all those jobs before. I've learned plumbing and electrical work while I've been down here. I have a lot of options of work that I can do. That doesn't mean that I want to do any of those. I want to be down here running the bar. This was my life dream, to come down here and open this bar. I've been talking about opening up this bar since I was 21.
Beginning on January 15, 2022, certain establishments will be required to verify that their patrons 12 years old and older have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine.
When the mayor decided to implement these mandates, I looked at him and I said, hey, that's just not the right thing. That's not the American way. There's not a reason why we should exclude anybody from this bar, because that's the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to welcome everybody into the bar. Everybody should be welcome. That should be true everywhere in America. What happened from that was, man, full force from the DC city government. Everybody, when they're 21, 22, is like, I want to open up a bar. I remember watching Cheers as a young man, and I really did, and I watched it. I mean, it just was a great experience in a show that I loved, and an idea that I loved, of just people where everybody knows your name, and people are happy, and it's a really good place. And I think that's what we've built here. My brother bought a house out here in Northeast Washington, D.C. and said, hey, Eric, I think we can finally open up a bar out here. And I said, where? He said, Northeast Washington, D.C. And I laughed at him on the phone. I was like, no way we're coming to Northeast D.C. I'm not taking my life savings there. About 5 months later, probably, my dad passed away from cancer. He's 36 and said, either you're going to do this or you're not going to do it, but you got to quit telling people that you're going to open up a bar if you're not going to do it. My older brother lived in Montpellier, France for 10 years, and he went out there and just kept staying and found a reason. He ended up being a sous chef at a small restaurant out there. And when we started talking about, hey, we're going to open up this bar restaurant, what we really wanted to do was have good food. And both of us love hamburgers. No, it's a really nice neighborhood. It's a really nice feeling to have a community and the people around you. And I think that this place is a really big part of that.
We closed because the mandate, there was a mandate in DC where restaurants and bars are required to check the vaccination status of anybody 18 and older. And we didn't want to do that, so we did it.
I'm Robert Alt. I'm the president and CEO of the Buckeye Institute. So Buckeye is a free market think tank based in Columbus, Ohio. We work on economic and legal issues, and we also have a legal center that litigates. And in that sense, I'd say I have the best job in the world, which is to say I sue government entities when they overstep their power and when they infringe on individual rights.
Man, I'd like to circle back on the big board situation in Agra. There are some folks pointing out that no other businesses have really been fined for not requiring to show proof. Do you feel that this business, if they continue to flaunt the mandate, that they should be shut down, and do you think that will legally hold up?
I like the business to comply.
They took away my liquor license, they took away my health license, and they took away my basic business license. And for the basic business license, I don't have any right to appeal until the mayor declares an end to the emergency.
When you're a small businessman like Eric, who's been closed down trying to take on City Hall. It's fundamentally a David versus Goliath scenario. And if you're David in that situation, up against insurmountable odds, you need someone in your corner. You need someone in your corner to help you to find and exploit the weak spots. That's where Buckeye comes in.
They're trying to make me be their enforcement arm, and I'm not. The government doesn't send me a paycheck. They don't.
Why should I ask you about your medical records? Like, I don't ask people, hey, you have AIDS or HIV? Let me see your card or something. Like, yeah, let me see your medicine. Are you being healthy? I don't do stuff like that.
So when you boil down this case, it really goes to the fact that DC has been operating under a perpetual state of emergency for approximately 2 years. By doing this, they've insulated their laws from review by Congress, as is required by DC's Home Rule Charter, and they've also functionally closed the courthouse doors. This violates the due process rights of my client, and it explains why it is that the court should overrule the order and reopen the big board.
My servers, when they come in here, according to the current regulations, they're required to wear their masks all the time. Well, customers are required to wear their masks from the 4 feet they walk in the front door till there's a water in front of them. From that point on, my 4 or 5 servers are wearing masks, and there are 70 people in here who are not. The servers are not second-class citizens. They don't need to wear masks. We've always talked as Americans about this, and we look at other countries and we're like, oh man, I can't believe China is doing this, or Russia is doing this, or Iraq is doing this. What about when it's happening to you right here in your own country by unelected officials with laws that are not passed through my representative? That's just not American way. It's not. We get to vote for our representatives. They have to pass laws. They have to. It's been 2 years. If 2 years you can't write a law, then you probably need to seek some other profession. Thank you all for coming. It's awesome. Just like we did the other days, we're going to go 2 blocks that way and 2 blocks that way and clean up the trash that's on the things there. Because you guys did such a good job before, we got to go all the way down to 11th Street to start now. We'll do 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. I went and walked it yesterday. There's a lot of trash there to be found. Thank you guys for coming, continuing to support tomorrow. Paychecks will be coming in for you guys who got them. So I'll be here at 11 to wait, and I'll send everybody a text as soon as they get here.
Working for Eric is it's fun, man. Yeah, I've never worked for somebody like that is. He's frustratingly unselfish. Where it's just like he goes way too far to do things that he doesn't have to do for the people that work for him. It's not something that we ask him to do. It's just the person that he is. It's kind of frustrating to see him make so many sacrifices in his own life to make sure we get $10 or $20 more into our bank account. But that's the type of person he is. So it's just a honorable person to work for.
So the best way that I can describe what kind of person Eric is, full of life, you know what I mean? Good person.
Now, obviously, every single day that Eric is closed, it's costing him money. He still has rent to pay. He's actually still going above and beyond and paying his employees, even though he's closed and can't actually sell any beers, any burgers. So that's absolutely devastating.
Have I made myself a rich person down here? No. And particularly given the last 2 years. But have I always had fun here? And I don't mean every day. Nobody has a good day every day, but yeah, most of the time. And I love the people who work here. I love the people who come in. They're my friends, they're my family, they're my neighborhood.
I mean, I'd like us to be open. I do firmly believe that everyone should be allowed to come in here.
Even after the city has lifted the vaccine mandate requirements and bars and restaurants are open and they no longer are checking vaccine cards, Eric's business is still closed. We've actually sent a demand letter to the DC government asking them to go ahead and reinstate the big board's licenses and to allow him to reopen immediately. We're giving the city an opportunity to come to their senses, and we've asked them to do so by Wednesday. If they do, we'd be pleased if that's the end of the story. But if they don't, then we'll see them in court.
For me, this is in no way a political issue. This is a civil liberties issue. It's not my job to prove that I'm allowed to enact my freedoms. It's the government's job to prove to me why I'm not allowed to have them. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not an anti-masker. I'm pro having a good time in a bar and everybody being welcome.
When I found out there was one guy who's putting it all on the line to stand up to tyranny, I wanted to go see him because I was being persecuted here in Congress for standing up to the craziness. And all I had to lose was an election, frankly. So this guy's way more brave than me. I said, I gotta go meet this guy. And he did not disappoint me.
Here's a guy who said he was going to defend his country, and he still wants to defend his right to have a business. And I say, raise a glass, but we can't raise a glass other than water because the government's shutting him down. But to Eric, I want to thank you for, having the guts to stand up and say, this is my living, this is my restaurant. The government shouldn't force people to present their medical records. But thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Senator.
The government doesn't send me a paycheck. I send the government money. I am not an agent of the government to do this. If they want to come down and check people's medical status, they're more than welcome to. I don't have the people for that. When people walk into this place, we get them and sit them down and get them a drink and get them a beer. That's it. We get them food, really good food. I don't know. I really don't know. When people ask me, where are you going to get on the other side of this? I don't know. I just know that I'm doing the right thing. And this place is supposed to be open.
The mandate is illogical. The only logical thing to do is to defy it. If the mandate is unconstitutional, it is constitutional not to follow it. If the mandate is unscientific, the only scientific thing to do is to ignore it. And so God bless you and thank you for being in the fight.
Thank you very much. My father fought for this country, and Marine Corps, and you're a Navy veteran, and to me that means a lot. In Tennessee, it still means a lot, and I know it does in Kentucky as well. So I want to thank you for your fight, and just keep it up, brother. And I'm sorry they're shutting you down.
After the big board was closed by 3 separate agencies, the Buckeye Institute went ahead and filed demand letters with the agencies requesting that he be allowed to reopen immediately. Unfortunately, this was something of a slog. Even getting a positive response from one agency, the first was the DC Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs, which held his business license. They ultimately reinstated it after we issued our demand, but that wasn't enough. We then had to fight with the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. After multiple hearings, we were able to get his license reinstated. And finally, after he paid a fee to the DC Health Board, they went ahead and allowed him to reopen.
Reopening a bar after 50 days close is almost like reopening a brand new bar.
You have to bring in all your inventory. You have to come up with new schedules for staff. The items that are done naturally while the bar is open can't all be done quickly. We don't make the entire menu every day. It's fantastic to be back. I get to see all these people that I haven't seen for 2 months, hear their stories, what's going on with them. I haven't smiled as much as I've been smiling in the last 3 days in at least 2 months. And man, the staff is super happy and excited too. Really, it was just the pure joy and of what a bar's supposed to be, a place where people are going and having fun and everybody is welcome. With all of the stuff that was there, I ran through my life savings over the last 2 years. It's going to take me some time to crawl out of the hole. But being open is a lot better than being closed, and honestly, people are having fun, and it's going to take us some time, but we're slowly climbing back up out of that hole.
That was a great day. 3 agencies had issued orders against him. 3 agencies ultimately allowed him to reopen for a time.
I was coming home to my house on, I want to say April 17th, April 18th, right in that range, and I looked in my mailbox and I had certified mail from the city.
That DC Health was seeking additional penalties, even though they claimed at the time that there would be no additional fees. And they did so seeking these penalties for the original violations, for his failure back in February to check people's vaccine IDs, for his failure back in February to require patrons and employees to wear masks. This was something they knew about at the time. This was something they knew about when he was permitted to reopen, but they were seeking that additional pound of flesh.
I thought everything was done. I did. I really didn't want to open my mail and find something else from the health department. I mean, we had corresponded with email on them. The licenses had all been returned. There was no reason for anything more to be done.
So the agencies did finally allow him to reopen, but there's kind of a pulling the rug out from under him, or if you prefer, it was kind of loosey with the football. Okay, so you got to reopen, but oh, by the way, here's another $2,000 in fines after you've already paid a reinstatement fee. And, we're going to claim the authority to go ahead and do this again to you anytime we declare that there's an emergency. Enough.
This is a copy of the complaint that we're going to be filing in DC federal court. There we're seeking a couple of different things. Number one, we're seeking essentially a remedy to make you whole for the unlawful fees that you were forced to pay because of the orders. But we're also seeking to vindicate the larger principle here, which is ultimately DC Health should not have been issuing these negative orders against you and these fines and penalties to begin with, because they were actually relying on unlawful orders from the mayor, who was in turn relying on unlawful emergency acts that extended beyond 90 days from the DC City Council.
We begin the process by which Eric finally gets his day in federal court. His ability to actually hold the government accountable for its actions.
The difference between, somebody who's being persecuted and hated and a hero in COVID is about 2 years. That's my experience. If it weren't for some people like Eric who just refused to comply, we might still be under these ridiculous mandates. Government isn't the laws that are written down, it's whatever the people in charge can get away with. And what Eric said was, I'm not going to be your Gestapo.
In running your own small business, there are tons and tons and tons of administrative hurdles that you challenge every day, from running your payroll to making sure your taxes are right, to making sure that you have put your stuff in with your accountant, to just making sure that the business operates. It's done on a very thin margin. I don't have a team or a staff of people that does that for me. When the city adds additional administrative requirements on top of that, it's it's almost completely overwhelming, which is why I'm very lucky to have Robert Alt from the Buckeye Institute helping me out with this case.
I mean, quite frankly, I don't know that he'll ever be made whole. You can't go ahead and give him back the month and a half that he was closed. And it's unlikely that he's going to be repaid all the monies that he was lost because of this. But at the very least, we should be able to get back some of the funds that were unlawfully taken from him, first of all. But second of all, what Eric is most interested in, what we're most interested in, is vindicating the underlying principle. The idea that the law applies, the rule of law applies, even during stages of emergency. That government can't go ahead and limit your rights simply because it has declared an emergency. That it can't suspend your ability to go into court. That it can't go ahead and suspend limits on its own power indefinitely for years on end because it says so. We hold governments accountable, and here in America we do so via the courts. And so that's what we're seeking to do in this case.
Since we've made a stand, some people were not very happy that we were allowed to reopen. And they have continually harassed us in the small ways that they can. They call the Department of Public Transportation to look at our patio license. They call the DDOT to look at our trash area. They've now filed an official protest against our liquor license. And I've been assured by them that there is nothing unusual about these actions. I just don't see it happening to anybody else. There were people who used to come into the bar who I know, and I know them well, I know their families, and I will look at them and say, "Hey, how are you? How's your day going?" And they will look down at the ground, look at the side, pretend like I don't even exist. I'm not quite sure why, but it doesn't feel very good when these are people that you've talked with and dealt with who pretend like you're not even there. The city's council and the mayor were derelict in their duties to take the actions that they saw necessary if there was truly an emergency. They have to do that. They had plenty of time to write a law, to pass it through the legislature and approve it via normal means. They did that with a vaccine mandate for the kids in school, and at the same time abused their power by implementing the vaccine check mandate and the mask mandate in bars via executive order. That's not how our government's supposed to work, and that's not how a representative democracy works.
Even the businesses that didn't stand up, Eric stood up to the tyranny. But the businesses, just because you went along and played along with the tyranny doesn't mean you're still in business. Here in Washington, D.C., there's still businesses boarded up. They never recovered from this, and they didn't even take the stand that Eric did.
The world is tough right now for bars in D.C. I think the world's tough for bars around the country. But we're going to keep on doing what we've been doing, serving people with a smile, treating people with the dignity and the respect that they deserve, and continuing with our proof of concept. Everybody is welcome.